Hello students, in this video we will discuss about chapter number 3, that is metals and non-metals. So let's start. In ninth standard we have classified the substances as elements and as compounds. So over there we have studied about elements in detail, that elements are the pure substances that consist of same type of particles. This thing we already have studied in ninth standard. Then we can classify elements on the basis of their properties as metals and non-metals. So metals and non-metals is nothing, just the classification of elements on the basis of their properties. If we talk about metals, so metals are the elements which form electropositive elements, or they will form positive ion by losing electron. Why they form positive ion? Because metals are having 1, 2 or 3 electrons in their last shell. That means they are having either 1 electron or 2 electron or 3 electrons in the last shell. Now to attain the stable noble gas configuration, that is to have the octet in the last shell, they will lose these electrons, and whenever they will lose these electrons they will acquire a positive charge. That's why they are termed as electropositive elements. If we talk about the example of metals, so number of metals we are having, for example, are iron, gold, silver, aluminium, copper, platinum, zinc, lead, mercury, etc. If we talk about non-metals, so non-metals, they form electronegative elements. Now why they form electronegative elements? Because they are having either 5, 6 or 7 electrons in their last shell. If they are having these number of electrons in their last shell, to attain the stable noble gas configuration, they want that 8 electrons must be there in the last shell. To attain this configuration, what they will use? They will gain electrons, and whenever they will gain electrons, they will acquire a negative charge. So that's why they are said to form electronegative elements. If we talk about the example of non-metals, so we can have carbon, sulfur, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, silicon, phosphorus, chlorine, bromine, iodine, etc. Now let's talk about the physical properties of metals. These properties you already have studied in your previous classes also, but in a brief we'll discuss here also. Physical property first is that metals are ductile. Ductility is the property with which a metal could be beaten into thin wires. So all the metals, they are ductile, could be drawn into thin wires. Second property, that metals are malleable. Malleable means they could be beaten and transformed into thin sheets. So all the metals, they are very much malleable. Third property, that metals are good conductors of heat and electricity. So all the metals, they conduct electricity. That's why they are used to prepare wires for the transformation of electricity, and utensils are prepared just because of this property. Next, metals are lustrous. Lustrous means they are having shine and can be polished. For example, silver is there, gold is there, copper is there. They all are very lustrous. If next property, that metals are sonorous. Sonorous means if they hit with any object, so they will produce sound. So this is the property of this, that metals are sonorous. Next one, metals are generally hard except sodium and potassium. Generally all the metals except sodium and potassium, they are hard. Sodium and potassium, they are not so hard. They are so soft that they could be easily cut with the help of a knife also. Next one, metals are solid at room temperature except mercury. Generally all the metals, they exist in the solid state at room temperature except mercury, which is a liquid. Next, metals usually have a silver or grey color except gold and copper. Generally all the metals, if we talk about aluminium, if we talk about iron, if we talk about silver, they generally have a silver or a grey color except gold and copper, because gold is having yellowish color and copper is brownish yellow. Next one, metals have high melting point except cesium and gallium. Generally all the metals, their melting point is quite high except cesium and gallium. Their melting point is so low that they could even melt on your palm also. Next, now let's discuss about the physical properties of non-metals. So the very first property we have discussed in case of metals, that metals are ductile and they are malleable also, but such properties are not in case of non-metals. Non-metals, they are neither ductile, they are nor malleable. They are so brittle that if we try to beat them with a hammer, so they easily break. So non-metals are brittle in nature, that means can easily be broken. Second property, that they do not conduct heat and electricity except graphite. Graphite is an exception in case of non-metals which can conduct electricity. The other non-metals, they do not conduct heat and electricity. Next one, non-metals, they are generally soft except diamond, which is quite hard. Next, they show variety of colors. If we talk about the colors of non-metals, so they show a different variety of colors. For example, sulfur. The color of sulfur is yellow. The color of phosphorus, it could be white, it could be red. The color of chlorine is yellowish green. If we talk about graphite, that is a form allotrope of carbon, its color is black. If we talk about hydrogen and oxygen, they are colorless. So with these examples we can examine how much variety of colors non-metals basically show to us. Next one, they are not lustrous except iodine. Lustrous means they are not so shiny except iodine, which is having a purple gray shine. Next, they are either solid or gases except bromine. Generally, non-metals exist either in the solid state or in the gaseous state. For example, sulfur and phosphorus, they exist in the solid state. If we talk about the gaseous state, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, they all exist in the gaseous state except bromine, which exists in the liquid state. Next is the chemical properties of metals. First of all, let's talk about the reaction of metals with oxygen. How a metal will react with the oxygen from air. Generally, a metal reacts with the oxygen from air to form metal oxide. Whenever a metal reacts with oxygen, so it always forms a metal oxide. Let's consider these things with the help of an example. For example, if we take example of copper. So copper is not so reactive element. So it reacts with the oxygen, but it will not burn, it will not catch fire. It will form a compound copper oxide, which is basically black in color. Generally, the reaction of metals with oxygen, or we can say that the vigor of reaction of metal with oxygen, it depends on the reactivity series of metals. A metal which is more reactive will react vigorously with the oxygen, and if a metal is less reactive, so its reaction will not be so vigorous. So copper is not so reactive, so because of that reason it will not burn, it will simply react with the oxygen from the air and to form copper oxide, that is a black colored compound. Next example, if we talk about aluminium, so aluminium will combine with oxygen to form aluminium oxide. This aluminium oxide, this is a dull layer which forms on the surface of the aluminium, which behaves as a protective layer for aluminium. Third one, if we talk about sodium, so sodium react with oxygen to form sodium oxide. The very one point you need to remember, that sodium and potassium, they are very much reactive and their reaction is highly exothermic in nature. They react with oxygen even at room temperature. So to prevent their reaction, that is to prevent the reaction of sodium and potassium with oxygen, generally sodium and potassium, they are stored in kerosene to avoid its reaction with oxygen which is present in air, because these reactions are highly exothermic in nature and will evolve a large amount of heat. If we talk about magnesium, magnesium is generally not so reactive with oxygen. It only reacts with oxygen whenever heat is supplied to it. So when you will apply heat, then only magnesium will react with oxygen to form magnesium oxide. But this reaction, it will also produce intense amount of heat and light. And it will burn with a white flame. So these were the few examples of reaction of metals with oxygen. Now, if we talk about the nature of metal oxides, what will be the nature of metal oxide? The very first is that the nature of metal oxide will be basic. That means if you will prepare an aqueous solution of a metal oxide and if you will dip a red litmus paper in that, so it will turn that red litmus paper to blue, indicating that they are basic in nature. So metal oxides are basically basic in nature. Second one, if we talk about the solubility of these metal oxides, so most metal oxides, they are insoluble in water. Generally they are not soluble in water, but only a few metal oxides are there which dissolve in water to form alkali. About alkali we have discussed in our previous chapter of chemistry, that alkali are the soluble bases. The bases which are soluble, they are known as alkali. So if we let's consider the example of sodium and potassium, because the first group elements, first group metals, they are also known as alkali metals because their oxides are soluble in water and will form bases. So if we talk about the example of sodium, so sodium reacts with oxygen to form sodium oxide. This sodium oxide, when you dissolve it in water, so it will react with water to produce sodium hydroxide, which is an example of soluble base or an alkali. In the similar way, if we talk about potassium, so it will also react with oxygen to form potassium oxide. This potassium oxide is also soluble in water to give you, this potassium oxide also dissolve in water, so it will react with it to produce potassium hydroxide, which is again soluble. So these are the example of the oxides which are soluble in water. If we talk about the insoluble oxides, for example, aluminium hydroxide is there, copper hydroxide is there, which are not soluble in water. Third property, if we talk about, that some metal oxides show both acidic and basic behavior. Here too we have discussed that generally the nature of metal oxides is basic, but a few metal oxides are there which will show the acidic behavior also and basic behavior also. So such type of oxides, they are known as amphoteric oxides. That means they are showing dual behavior. Sometimes they behave as acidic, sometimes they behave as a basic. For example, aluminium oxide is there, zinc oxide is there. So they are the example of amphoteric oxides. Let's consider it with the help of an example of aluminium oxide. Here, now one more thing, these amphoteric oxides, they react with acid or base to produce salt and water, as in the case of the reaction of acids with bases. So here, if the aluminium oxide, it reacts with that is hydrochloric acid to give you aluminium chloride and water. So here you can see that this is a salt and this is water. This is only possible if it is an acid, so it will behave as a base. So here this oxide, this behaves as a base. Whereas if we react it with sodium hydroxide, which is a base, so here it reacts with sodium hydroxide to give you sodium aluminate plus water. It is still the salt. So here this reacts with base to give you salt and water, similar to the reaction of acid and a base. This is a base, so here it behaves as a acid and here it behaves as a base. So here we can see that this aluminium oxide, it behaves as acid also and it behaves as a base also. So because of this reason, it is known as amphoteric oxide. Next is reaction of metals with water, that how a metal will react with water. Different metals react with water in a different way. If we talk about two types of reactions can be possible in this case. Metal can react with water, that could be cold water, that could be hot water. That means if a metal is reacting either with a cold water or a hot water, so it will give you metal hydroxide and hydrogen. But when a metal reacts with steam, so instead of metal hydroxide, it will give you metal oxide and hydrogen. So this point you need to remember. If a metal is reacting with water, so it will give you hydroxide, and if a metal is reacting with steam, so it will give you oxide. Let's see this thing with the help of examples. Now all the metals they do not react equally with water. The intensity of reaction basically depends on the reactivity of that metal. Few metals are so much reactive that they even react with cold water. Few metals are there which do not react with cold water, they react with hot water. Even few metals are there which neither react with hot water, neither with cold water, they only react with steam. And few metals are still there which never reacts with water, either it is a cold water, hot water or steam. If we talk about sodium and potassium, they are so reactive that these reactions are highly violent in nature. Why? Because when sodium and potassium, they react with water to give you potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide as well as hydrogen gas. These two reactions are highly exothermic in nature. Here the heat evolved is sufficient for the hydrogen to attain its ignition temperature. We have already studied what is ignition temperature. It is a temperature at which a substance catches fire. So this heat is sufficient for the hydrogen to attain its ignition temperature, that it starts to burn. So whenever you'll react water with sodium or water with potassium, so these reactions in this large amount of heat will be evolved, and it appears as if water is burning, which is not, which is the hydrogen which is burning here. If we talk about calcium, one more thing, these sodium and potassium, they are so much reactive that they even react with cold water. If we talk about calcium, calcium is also reactive. It also reacts with cold water, but in this the heat evolved is not so sufficient for the hydrogen to catch fire. So in this reaction, it will not, here the hydrogen will not catch fire, but in this reaction, if you will perform this reaction, so you will see that this piece of calcium will starts to float. Now why this is happening here? Because when the hydrogen gases evolve in this reaction, so bubbles will be formed. Those bubbles, those tiny bubbles get stick to the piece of this calcium, which makes it lighter and it starts to float. This is the reason that why the piece of calcium will starts to float. If we talk about magnesium, magnesium is not so reactive. It never reacts with cold water. It only reacts with hot water to give you magnesium hydroxide and hydrogen. Even this magnesium, this can react with steam also, but when this magnesium reacts with hot water, so it will give you magnesium hydroxide. When it reacts with steam, so it will give you magnesium oxide, but this magnesium, it never reacts with cold water. Next is, there are few metals, for example aluminium, zinc and iron, they never react with either cold water or hot water, they only react with steam. And we have discussed that whenever a metal reacts with steam, so it will give you metal oxide and hydrogen. So let's see these equations. If a aluminium reacts with hydrogen, so it will give, reacts with water, gaseous, it indicates that we are talking about water in the form of steam. So whenever aluminium reacts with steam, so it will give you aluminium oxide and hydrogen. Similar way, if a zinc metal reacts with water in the form of steam, it will give you zinc oxide and hydrogen. And if iron reacts with steam, so it will give you ferrous oxide and hydrogen. So these three are the metals which only react with steam, not with hot and cold water. Now there are still few elements which neither react with hot water nor with cold water and not even with steam also. They never react with water, and the example of those metals is lead, copper, gold, silver, platinum. They never react with they never react with water in any of the forms. Next is the reaction of metals with dilute acid. A metal reacts with dilute acid to form metal salt and hydrogen. Now how a metal will react? Basically this will be a type of displacement reaction, because here the metal will displace the hydrogen from this acid and will form its own salt. So this is a type of displacement reaction we can consider, but the reaction will occur only if the metal lies above hydrogen in the reactivity series. Then only it will be able to displace hydrogen from this acid. Otherwise, in that case, no reaction will occur. If that metal lies below hydrogen in the reactivity series, then no reaction will occur, because in that situation metal will not be able to displace hydrogen from this acid. So let's see this thing with the help of an example. If we talk about sodium and magnesium, so a sodium reacts with hydrochloric acid. So how it will react with this sodium? It will, being a more reactive metal here, it will displace hydrogen and it will form its own salt, that is sodium chloride, and hydrogen gas will be evolved. This reaction is highly violent in nature because sodium is most reactive metal we are having. Second most reactive metal we are having. If we talk about magnesium, then it will also displace hydrogen from this acid and will form magnesium chloride, and hydrogen gas will be evolved. If we talk about aluminium, so this reaction in the beginning, it will not be so rapid, it will be a very slow reaction in the beginning. Why? Because if a piece of aluminium is lying, so it will react, the topmost layer of this aluminium react with the oxygen from that atmosphere and will form a thin layer of aluminium oxide. So whenever that aluminium reacts with acid, so in the beginning the reaction is slow because of this protective layer of aluminium oxide. After some time, this layer gets corroded by the action of acid, and then the rate of reaction increases, then that reaction becomes rapid. In the similar way, zinc and iron, they will also react with hydrochloric acid, as zinc and iron also lies above hydrogen in the reactivity series, hence can displace hydrogen and will form zinc chloride and iron chloride, and hydrogen gas will be evolved. Now we have discussed that whenever a metal reacts with acid, so it will give you metal salt and hydrogen. But if we talk about the nitric acid, that is HNO3, in that case hydrogen gas will not be evolved. The reaction of a metal with nitric acid will be a bit different from this. In that case hydrogen gas will not be evolved. The reason is because nitric acid acts as a strong oxidizing agent. It itself gets reduced but assists in the oxidation. Second thing, when a metal reacts with nitric acid, so in those reactions nitrogen monoxide, nitrogen dioxide or dinitrogen oxide can be formed. That depends on the concentration of nitric acid. So let's see this thing with the help of an example. When a metal, we have taken zinc here, so when a zinc reacts with nitric acid, here we have taken it as 60%, so it will form zinc nitrate plus nitrogen dioxide and water will be formed. When this same metal reacts with the 30% solution of nitric acid, then the other components will remain same, then we'll get nitrogen oxide. When it reacts with the 20%, then it will give you dinitrogen oxide. So these different oxides of nitrogen are formed just depending on the different concentration of nitric acid taken. But there are still few exceptions. If we talk about magnesium and manganese, they will react with nitric acid in a different way. Whenever magnesium and manganese, they react with nitric acid, so in that situation, again the hydrogen gas will be evolved. So these two we can consider as the exception case here. Second thing, these metals, they will not react with nitric acid when its concentration is even less than 20%. But magnesium and manganese, when we'll take the concentration of nitric acid about 1 to 2%, then also they will react with it to give you hydrogen gas. So these two can be considered as the exception in this case. Now there are few metals which lies below in the reactivity series, which lies below hydrogen in the reactivity series, which will not be able to displace hydrogen from its acid to make you salt and hydrogen gas. For such type of metals, we are having another solution which we call as aqua regia. So what basically this aqua regia is? Aqua regia is the freshly prepared mixture of concentrated hydrochloric acid and concentrated nitric acid in the ratio 3:1. So this aqua regia is the name of a mixture which contains hydrochloric acid and nitric acid in the ratio of 3:1. So this aqua regia is a highly corrosive liquid which can even dissolve all the metals. The metals which lies below hydrogen in the reactivity series, it can dissolve even those metals also. So let's see this thing with the help of an example. When we take concentrated nitric acid and hydrochloric acid in the ratio 1:3, so it will form water, nitrosyl chloride and 2 atomic chlorine that will be formed, which is quite difficult. So here we'll get 2 atomic chlorine also. So if we'll dissolve any metal in this solution, so how it will work, suppose let's see it with the help of an example of gold. If we take gold and will dissolve in this solution, so that gold combine with these atomic chlorine to form gold chloride, and this gold chloride is soluble because of its soluble complexes and will get easily soluble. Next is the reaction of metals with salt solution. When a metal reacts with a salt solution, so how it will occur? When a salt of metal B is combined with the metal A, so if this metal, if it is more reactive than this metal B, then this metal A will displace metal B from its salt solution and it will form salt solution of itself, and here this metal B will lift alone. So this is the reaction of a metal with a salt solution, but in this reaction, reactivity series plays a very important role. If this metal lies above in the reactivity series, if this metal lies above metal B in the reactivity series, then only it will be able to displace, otherwise not. If we talk about the reactivity series, so this is the reactivity series. This is the most reactive element and this is the least reactive element. Potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc, iron, lead, that is hydrogen, copper, mercury, gold and silver and gold. So this is the reactivity series. So let's see this thing with the help of an example. If we take a solution of copper sulfate and zinc, here we can see that zinc lies above in the reactivity series, then copper. So zinc will be able to displace copper from here and it will form zinc sulfate and copper. But if we try to perform the reverse of it, if we take zinc sulfate and if we try to add copper to it, then no reaction will occur because the copper lies below zinc in the reactivity series. Similarly, the case of copper sulfate and iron is there, as iron is more reactive than copper, so it will displace it from its salt solution and form iron sulfate and zinc will be formed. In the similar way, we can discuss about the reaction of metals with chlorine. All the metals, they will combine with chlorine to form ionic chloride. For example, sodium combined with chlorine here, so it will form sodium chloride, which is an ionic compound. Calcium combined with chlorine to form calcium chloride, which is again a ionic compound. Now let's see the chemical properties of non-metals. The very first is the reaction with oxygen. That is the reaction of a non-metal with oxygen. So a non-metal also reacts with oxygen to form non-metal oxide. But when we discussed it in the case of metal, so at that time the nature of metal oxide was basic. But if we talk about the nature of non-metallic oxide, so it can be either acidic or even neutral also. So either it will be acidic or it will be neutral. Let's see. If a carbon reacts with the sufficient supply of oxygen, so it will form carbon dioxide. One more thing, whenever if the acidic oxide, if the non-metallic oxide is acidic in nature and if that acidic oxide combines with water, so that always form acid. So this carbon dioxide, when it is dissolved in water, so it will form carbonic acid. In the similar way, when sulfur reacts with oxygen, so it will form sulfur dioxide, which is again acidic in nature. So when this reacts with water, so it will give sulfuric acid. But if we combine this carbon with oxygen, when the supply of oxygen is not sufficient, in the insufficient supply, so in that situation it will form carbon monoxide. The nature of carbon monoxide is neutral, neither it is acidic nor it is basic. And the similar way, when hydrogen combines with oxygen, then also it will form water, which is again neutral in nature. Next is the reaction of non-metal with water. So non-metal, it will never react with water, so in that case no reaction will occur. If we talk about the reaction of non-metal with acid, then also no reaction will occur. Next one is the reaction with chlorine. Whenever a non-metal reacts with chlorine, so it will form covalent chloride compound. In case of metals, we have discussed that whenever a metal reacts with chlorine, so it will always form ionic chloride. But here it always forms covalent chloride. The difference between ionic chloride and covalent chloride is that ionic chloride can conduct electricity, but covalent chloride will not conduct electricity. When hydrogen reacts with chlorine, so it will form hydrochloric acid. If potassium reacts with, so it will form potassium chloride. Next, if we talk about the reaction with salt solution, so here also a salt or a non-metal which is more reactive than other non-metals, so it will displace it from its salt solution. So here also, when sodium bromide and chlorine, when they react, so this chlorine is more reactive, so it will displace bromine from here and will form sodium chloride, and bromine will be isolated. Next is ions. What basically these ions are? An ion is the electrically charged atom. Whenever an atom acquires some charge, either it is positive charge or a negative charge, so it is termed as ion. An ion is formed. Now how that atom will acquire charge? That will acquire charge either by the gain of electron or because of loss of electron. So depending on whether that atom is gaining electron or losing electron, we can categorize ions as anion and cation. If we talk about anion, so anion is the negatively charged ion. If an atom acquires a negative charge, then it is termed as anion. Now question arises ki why an atom will acquire a negative charge. Suppose that if an atom is having either 5, 6 or 7 electrons in the outermost shell of its atom. If an atom is having either 5, 6 or 7 electrons. Now in order to acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, in order to acquire the stability, it will require 8 electrons in its outermost shell. That means its outermost shell must be completely filled. Then only it will be stable. So to acquire this thing, to acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, it wants 8 electrons in its outermost shell. Now to attain 8 electrons, if it is having 5, so what it will do? It will gain 3 electrons from outside. Then only it will have 8 electrons. If it is having 6 electrons, then it will gain 2 electrons from outside. And if it is having 7, then it will gain 1 electron from outside to attain the nearest noble gas configuration. If it is gaining electrons, so an atom, if it gains electrons, so it acquires a negative charge, and those negatively charged ions, they are known as anion. Let's see this thing with the help of an example. If we take example of chlorine, so the atomic number of chlorine is 17. If we write its electronic configuration, so it will be written as 2, 8 and 7. This shell, that is the K shell, L shell and M shell. This K shell is completely filled because it can have a maximum of 2 electrons. Next L shell, it can have a maximum of 8 electrons and it is also completely filled. But if we talk about the last shell, so it is not completely filled, it is having 7 electrons. Now in order to attain the noble gas configuration, what it wants? It wants 8 electrons also in the last shell, so it will gain 1 electron from outside. And if a chlorine, it will gain 1 electron, it will gain 1 electron from outside, so it will acquire a negative charge. Why it is acquiring a negative charge? Because generally the number of electrons is equal to number of proton. In an atom, the number of electrons is equal to the number of protons, then only it is electrically balanced. But if it acquires an extra electron from outside, so this negative charge gets increased, so because of which it will acquire a negative sign. So this is the anion of chlorine. So this is anion. If we talk about another example, suppose if we talk about oxygen, so oxygen atomic number is 8, its electronic configuration will be written as 2 and 6. So it is also having 6 electrons in the outermost shell. To acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, it will gain 2 electrons. So this will have a charge of 2. So this is the anion of oxygen. This was about anion. If we talk about cation, so cation is the positively charged ion. If an atom, it will lose electrons. So whenever an atom lose electron, then it will gain a positive charge, and that is known as cation. Let's see this thing with the help of an example of sodium atom. So the sodium atomic number is 11. So its electronic configuration could be written as 2, 8 and 1. That means it is having 1 electron. Now one more thing. If an atom is having either 1, 2 or 3 electrons in the outermost shell, so in order to acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, it will lose these electrons, because it is quite difficult for it to gain 7 electrons. Then only it will have 8. If an atom is having 2 electrons, so in order to acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, it is having 2 options. Either it will lose 2 electrons or it will gain 6 electrons. So it is easy for it to lose 2 electrons. So it will lose 2 electrons, it will lose 3 electrons. So whenever an atom loses electrons, generally number of protons and number of electrons are equal, but if an atom will lose electrons, so negative charge gets decreased, hence it is shown with a positive charge. So this a positively charged ion is known as cation. So we were discussing about sodium. Its configuration was 2, 8 and 1. It is having 1 electron in the outermost shell. To acquire the noble gas configuration, it will lose this electron. And whenever it will lose this electron, so it will acquire a positive charge. This thing we can show it with the help of a dot structure also. This dot structure, what will do, will show this nucleus, then its different shells, and these dots are representing the number of electrons. So this is the outermost shell, 1 electron. When it loses, so this shell disappears. In the last shell, it is having 8 electrons, which is the stable configuration for it. Here it was having the configuration 281, and here it will have a configuration of 28, which is the nearest noble gas configuration. Next is the formation of ionic compound. How an ionic compound will be formed when two ions, one cation and one anion, when they combine, so at that time we'll get a compound which is known as ionic compound. So basically ionic compound is formed by the transfer of electron, because an anion or an cation, they will also transfer electrons. So if the compound is formed by the transfer of electrons, so that compound is known as ionic compound, and the bonding between those elements of that compound is known as ionic bonding. And ionic compound is formed when a metal, it combines with a non-metal, because a metal always acquires a positive charge, that is a cation, and a non-metal always acquires a negative charge, that is a anion. So when a metal and a non-metal, they combine, so at that time the ionic compound is formed, and the bonding between metal and the non-metal, that is known as ionic bonding. Let's see this thing with the help of an example. If we consider the case of sodium chloride. So sodium chloride is an example of ionic compound. Now how the sodium chloride will be formed? Sodium, its electronic configuration is 281. That means it is having 1 electron in its last shell. That will show with the help of this dot. This is the dot structure, we can say. Chlorine, electronic configuration is 287. It is having 7 electrons in its outermost shell. Now in order to acquire the stable, in order to acquire the nearest noble gas configuration, either they will gain electron or they will lose electron. It is having 1 electron, so it will think, why not to lose this electron and to get stable. So this will lose this want to lose this electron. Chlorine, it is having 7 electrons. It wants to gain 1 electron. It wants that from anywhere I must get 1 electron. So it require 1 electron. So they both will decide, it want to lose and it want to gain. Why not to combine together, so that they both will attain the nearest noble gas configuration. So this will lose its electron to chlorine. This will, so here the transfer of electron will take place. Sodium will transfer its electron to chlorine here to get stable, and in this way they will combine. If sodium is losing this electron, so it will acquire a positive charge. Chlorine is gaining this electron, it will acquire a negative charge. And by gaining or losing these electrons, they will get their stable configuration. So this is how a sodium chloride and ionic compound is formed. In the similar way, if we talk about potassium chloride, so, electronic configuration for potassium is 2881. It is having one electron in the outermost shell, that is shown with a single dot. Chlorine, as we already have discussed, it is having 7 electrons. So it want to lose this electron and it requires 1 electron. So in this way they will also combine to give you potassium chloride. If we talk about magnesium chloride, so here the case is a little bit different. Magnesium chloride, how it will form? Here magnesium, its configuration is 282. That means it is having 2 electrons in the outermost shell. It want to lose these 2 electrons here. So if it want to lose these electrons, chlorine, it want to gain 1 electron. So chlorine can accept only 1 electron of this magnesium, but magnesium want to lose 2 electrons. So what will happen here? Here 2 chlorine atoms. So magnesium will give 1 electron to this chlorine and second electron to this chlorine. In this way, it will also attain its stable configuration, it will also attain its noble gas configuration, and it will also attain its nearest noble gas configuration. So in this way, one magnesium provide these electrons to 2 different chlorine atoms. Thus magnesium chloride, that is MgCl2, will be formed. In the similar way, magnesium oxide will form. Magnesium is having 2 valence electrons, oxygen is having 6. It want to lose these electrons and oxygen want to gain 2 electrons. So it is having deficiency of 2, it is having 2 extra. So it will give these 2 electrons to oxygen and acquire a positive charge. It will acquire a negative charge, hence form magnesium oxide. So this is how ionic compound will be formed. So this was about the chapter 3, metals and non-metals. Thank you.